Dr. Laurence Brown stood in the sterile hallway of George Washington University Hospital, his hands trembling as he stared through the glass window of the neonatal intensive care unit. Inside that room, his newborn daughter lay motionless, her tiny body connected to a web of tubes and monitors. Her skin was blue, not the soft pink of a healthy newborn, but a deep, terrifying shade of blue that every doctor recognizes instantly: cyanosis. Her heart wasn't pumping enough oxygen to her body. Dr. Brown was no ordinary father watching helplessly from outside. He was a trained ophthalmic surgeon from Brown University Medical School, a man who had spent years studying human anatomy, physiology, and the intricate systems that keep us alive. But all that knowledge meant nothing now, because the specialists had just delivered the diagnosis that shattered his world: severe congenital heart defect. Her heart had formed incorrectly in the womb. The chambers weren't aligned properly. The valves weren't functioning. Blood wasn't flowing the way it should. The pediatric cardiologist pulled him aside, speaking in that careful, measured tone doctors use when delivering devastating news. "Dr. Brown, I need you to understand the severity of this condition. Your daughter will need multiple open-heart surgeries throughout her childhood. The first one needs to happen within weeks, but she's too small, too weak right now. Even if she survives the first surgery, there will be complications. More surgeries. Years of medical intervention." He paused, then added the words no parent ever wants to hear. "And even with all of that, there's no guarantee she'll make it to adulthood." Dr. Brown nodded mechanically, his mind racing through everything he knew about cardiac anatomy. He understood exactly what the doctor was saying. He'd seen cases like this during his medical training. He knew the statistics. He knew the survival rates. He knew that modern medicine, for all its advances, still couldn't guarantee his daughter's life. That night, Dr. Brown sat alone in the hospital cafeteria at 2 a.m., staring at a cold cup of coffee. His wife was sleeping in the recovery room, exhausted from labor and sedated to manage her own emotional collapse. He was alone with his thoughts. And for the first time in his adult life, those thoughts terrified him. You see, Dr. Laurence Brown wasn't just a surgeon. He was a committed atheist. He had been raised without religion, educated in the finest secular institutions, and had built his entire worldview on one principle: science explains everything. If you can't measure it, test it, or prove it, it doesn't exist. God? An ancient superstition. Prayer? Psychological self-comfort. Miracles? Statistical anomalies misunderstood by primitive minds. But now, sitting in that empty cafeteria, watching the second-hand tick on the wall clock, Dr. Brown felt something he'd never experienced before: complete and utter helplessness. He couldn't operate on his daughter himself. He couldn't force her heart to heal. He couldn't control the outcome. For a man who had spent his entire life believing that human intelligence and effort could solve any problem, this was more than a medical crisis. It was an existential one. At 3:17 a.m., Dr. Brown found himself walking through the hospital corridors with no destination in mind. His feet carried him past the surgical wing, past the administrative offices, past the employee break rooms. And then he stopped. He was standing in front of a door he'd walked past hundreds of times but never entered: the Interfaith Chapel. He pushed the door open slowly. The room was small, dimly lit by a single lamp in the corner. There were rows of simple wooden chairs facing a table at the front. On that table sat symbols of different faiths: a Christian cross, a Jewish menorah, an Islamic prayer rug, a Buddhist statue. The room smelled faintly of incense and old wood. Dr. Brown stood in the doorway for a long moment, feeling ridiculous. "What am I doing here?" he thought. "I don't believe in any of this." But his legs moved forward anyway. He sat down in the back row, his head in his hands. And then, for the first time since childhood, Dr. Laurence Brown prayed. Not a formal prayer from any religious text, not a rehearsed recitation, just raw, desperate words spoken into the silence. "I don't know if anyone is listening. I don't even know if I believe anyone is there. But if there is a God, If there is some higher power in this universe, his voice cracked, I can't save my daughter. I've tried to understand it medically, logically, scientifically, but I can't fix this. I can't control this. I can't do anything. He took a shaky breath. So if you're real, if you exist, I'm asking you to save her. Please, save my daughter. Then he made a promise that would change his entire life. And if you do, if you save her, I swear I will search for the truth. I will find out which religion is real, which path is correct, and I will follow it, no matter where it leads me. Dr. Brown sat in that chapel for nearly 20 minutes, tears streaming down his face. Then he stood up, wiped his eyes, and walked back to the NICU. When he arrived at the unit, something was different. The nurses were gathered around his daughter's incubator, speaking in hushed, urgent tones. Dr. Brown's heart dropped. No, he thought, not already. Please, not already. He rushed forward, preparing himself for the worst. But when the head nurse turned to face him, her expression wasn't grief. It was confusion. Dr. Brown, she said slowly, we need you to look at something. She stepped aside, and he approached the monitor displaying his daughter's vital signs. His eyes scanned the numbers. Oxygen saturation, 94%. It had been 62% just hours ago. Heart rate, stable and regular. It had been erratic and weak. He looked down at his daughter. Her skin was no longer blue.